Guys, how's it going? As I record this, which is on January 23rd, the Midwest, I think maybe some of the East is fixing to get slapped with some bad weather. Where I used to live, it's 1 degree right now, I think, and it's in the 66 here, in Tallahassee, Florida. So if you have any questions about why I moved back to my home state, I think that answers it. As a reminder, this is the exclusive career podcast. I also have the exclusive career coach, which is job search focused. I just wrapped up a two-part series in January on how to improve your resume for applicant tracking systems. So that was a really good deep dive into what the recruiter sees in terms of how it evaluates your resume against the job description and against the other candidates, and how you can use that information to improve your resume. Today, we're going to talk about executive presence. And this is such a core competency if you want to get into the C-suite, if you want to succeed once you're in the C-suite. But I also find it to be a topic that is very kind of nebulous. Like, what does that really mean? So I want to start with kind of a description of that, a definition. And then my aim today is to demystify that process, kind of clarify what it means, and also give you some specific action steps that you can take. I know that you guys love those actionable items from both of my podcasts. So I want to give you some specifics. Hopefully, this doesn't overwhelm you, but at the minimum, zone in on one of these areas that I talk about and say, okay, I'm going to follow her suggestion with the action step for that area that I think I could really use some improvement in. All right, so executive presence is not about being the loudest person in the room, but rather the person who has the perceived ability to lead. And that's really what we're going to be talking about. What leads to, what contributes to that perception that you are someone who can lead. So the first thing I want to talk about is gravitas. A huge part of executive presence is the weight you carry, not around your middle like me, but rather how do you react when something goes sideways, a project fails, when you maybe don't have all of the information that you would like to have, but you have to make a decision because things are in a critical state. You must move quickly. Are you also able, part of this gravitas is, are you able to read the room, understand the vibe, what's going on, what are the nonverbal cues telling you, and are you able to manage your own vibe in the room, and decide on how you want to show up, regardless of what might be going on in that room or outside that room for you? So here's an example, or I guess a kind of an exercise. I want you to think of a boss that you've had that fell apart in a high stress situation. So whatever it was that was going on, you kind of watched this crash and burn. You might have seen with nervous energy from that person. Maybe their verbal communication sped up and didn't maybe make a lot of sense. The directions that he or she was giving were unclear, and they seemed unable to answer even fairly simple questions from their team. So think about that. So that's one side of this coin, obviously, not the ideal side. And then I want you to think of a boss that you've had that rose to the occasion in a high stress situation. So you could not help but be admiring of their calm under pressure demeanor, the way that they clearly communicated everything that needed to be done, had a very steady vocal cadence that was very soothing to the people on the team, and perhaps even a smile when doing all of this. They just didn't get rattled. So think about that, and certainly going forward as you see people in your sphere who are in those high stress situations, observe them. That you learn a lot from observing people, kind of get a sensing, okay, I want to copy that or I want to, emulate that, not to be someone else. And I'm going to emphasize that again at the end. This is not about you becoming someone you are not, but rather becoming the best version of yourself. So you see something that you like, how can you adapt that for yourself? You see something that you don't like and realize that you are guilty of that thing. How can you, kind of diminish and eventually remove that behavior from your persona? So here's an action step. So the next, and I kind of alluded to this, the next time you're in a group meeting, just pay attention to the energy of the other participants in the room, as well as your own. Kind of read the room, focus on that, focus on paying attention to what's not being said, or how things are being said. And also, based on that assessment, be very deliberate in what you decide to say or not say based on your assessment of the room. So that first one is gravitas. Huge part of executive presence is that weight that you carry, the way that you just cannot walk into a room without being noticed, without drawing attention. All right, the next one is communication. Obviously, huge part of executive presence. And it's not just what you say, but it's how you package what you say. You want to make sure that you're very concise. One of the things that is a huge sort of turnaround for you in terms of communication and executive level communication is to lead with a headline. So many people start with, a 10-minute backstory about something and they go on and you just like get to the point. Can we just please? But starting with a headline, thinking about this as these are busy executives. They don't have time to hear about how the sausage was made. They want to know how much sausage we have on the shelves or whatever the equivalent is for the work that you do. Also, filler words. This is a huge one that is so important to me. Oftentimes we don't hear as much anymore. If you're listening to podcasts, they often just filter that out automatically. What I am hearing a lot of now that kind of drives me nuts, does drive me nuts, is I mean. So they start a sentence. There's a woman, and I shall not name, on a podcast that I listen to. And she is a journalist, so she is interviewing people. And sometimes they're interviewing her as well. And she will often start with, I mean, it's a filler. It's nothing but a filler. Actually, watch the use of the word actually, particularly actually is a real word and it has real purpose. But if you are saying, well, I actually lost my mind over that. No, you didn't, right? So be careful about that. It diminishes your effectiveness as a verbal communicator. Right. I'm guilty of that one a little bit. So I tend to start sentences and paragraphs with so a lot. So just be aware of that. I'm going to give you a good action step for this one. As you are communicating, particularly one-on-one, but even if you are in front of a group, focus on eye contact, whether it's one person or the group, and maintain an open posture. Keep your arms not crossed, face the person you are talking with, and have your shoulders back, very open. Make sure you don't have your arms crossed in a defensive posture. So here's an exercise. Think of someone you have heard speak recently who used excessive vocal pauses. How did you react? Were you able to actually listen to what they were saying, or did you find yourself so distracted by the vocal pauses? I actually, I feel like I'm saying actually a lot because I am. I listened. I used to work for an outplacement firm, and one of the people who was, I don't know, I think he was a tech guy, and he had to speak to our group of resume writers and career coaches occasionally. And he was just not a good presenter at all, not a good public speaker. And I was aware of this. And so when he was going to do this 15 or 20-minute presentation, I started ticking ums from the beginning because I knew it was going to be an issue. And I just wanted to, I couldn't listen to him. I could not hear what he was saying for all the ums. and I think it was like close to 100. It was like 78 ums. That's insane. Conversely, who have you heard speak recently who was so clear that you were completely engaged? They were not just the absence of the vocal pauses and vocal fillers, but just the way they communicated was so clear, so maybe picturesque. You could see what they were talking about, you could visualize it. And so, my action step for this one, my recommendation is record yourself using Zoom, Teams, whatever you use, without a script. So, think of something, I don't know, maybe it's a presentation that you have coming up soon, something that you are familiar with. You could even like be both like ask a question as if you were interviewing yourself and then answer it. But what I don't want you to have is a script in front of you. I want you to be speaking extemporaneously, not prepared. How many vocal pauses? What kind of vocal pauses? Are there other things, especially when you have that visual medium of Zoom or Teams? What else might I be doing? Am I pl I've ugh. There's one podcast I cannot watch her on video. She has great content, but she plays with her hair. This is a woman who makes millions of dollars as a coach every year. I cannot look at her on video because she plays with her hair. I don't know why someone hasn't coached her on that. So record yourself, watch it, tell yourself the truth about what you're seeing, and then that awareness is the first step to correcting any issues that you see. And finally, we have appearance. And this is not just about did I spend the most money on clothes, but rather how polished and professional you appear. We've all seen people who clearly spent a lot of money on their clothes and did not make the right choices. Am I right? So appearance, here's the thing about appearance. It really went by the wayside during COVID. We didn't get out of our pajamas. I mean, it was crazy. We only looked good from, the waist up or the neck up or whatever. But many people have now returned to work. And what I have seen and gathered is that not everyone has gone back to the wardrobe rules or their own, kind of wardrobe style that they did before COVID. And frankly, if that's the same wardrobe you have, well, COVID started in 2020. It might be time for some new clothes. I also want to make sure you realize that this is not just about the clothes that you put on your back. Women, makeup can be very important for executive presence. If this is not your strength, find a makeup artist, get a session. A friend of mine just did one here in town because she wanted to have some professional photos done. And I really liked that this individual, I kind of looked her up online to see what she did and what she offered. She gives you, like, it's a tutorial. It's not just a, hey, here's your makeup, go. But she teaches you, and then she also creates a list for you as you leave so that you could make purchases of any of the makeup items that you like. And she, I think, sold a few things, but mostly it was maybe you're going to the department store and picking up things or going online. But she's giving you a list to do that. This is money well spent. Same thing for accessories. Ladies, if this is not your strength, go somewhere when you are buying the clothes, whether this is a high-end department store, a boutique that you particularly like. Women, if you are, I don't know, 40 or later, J. Jill, fantastic. Love J. Jill. And whatever, if you're younger, what is that store where they will dress you professionally appropriate for your industry, your particular role, and help you to ideally select a purse, all of the things, right? Be all in. And my recommendation has always been when you want to do that. So if you can make an appointment, all the better. But if you are just walking into a store and asking for help, go during the day, during the week. That tends to be when the full-time people work and it's not so crowded. You might get a little bit of help. In terms of your digital presence, so whether you are living part of your business life on Zoom or Teams or wherever, pay attention to things like lighting, your background, camera, audio quality, all of that. I am not a huge fan of the backgrounds, the fake backgrounds because they still are pixelated. but you may have a great one. Your company may provide a great one, but you want to pay attention to those things. So here's an exercise. Who do you admire? It could be someone at your work, someone that you watch on videos, someone that you watch on maybe a video version of a podcast. You admire them for how they consistently dress well at work. I'm currently binging The Good Wife, which is a legal drama. And while the main character, she's gotten a little bit more fashion forward, what who really impresses me is the older woman, Diane Lockhart's character, and how she dresses. Now, she's an older woman, but I don't see, she dresses very fashionable, even for someone who's, much younger than her. So the idea is to look at that and really analyze why is it that I really like the way that person always dresses? What is it that they are doing? And if you have a chance to see that person in the near future, really take a look at that and, ask them questions. Where'd you get that? I would love to dress more like you. Where do you buy your clothes? What advice can you give me? Now, the flip side, I've been giving the flip side on all of these. I remember years ago, this is back when I was working at Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia. So we're talking pre this century. And I was asked by my secretary to put in a good word for her daughter for a job in human resources. She worked at this company, I won't mention the name, but she really wanted this HR. I think it might have been a recruiting job in HR. And I said, sure, I don't mind. I'm just going to go have a conversation with the HR people, have a meeting. So I said, I'll mention her. I didn't know her very well, but I was going to put in a good word. And when I did that, the two women that I was meeting at looked at each other and there that was a look. And so I said, hey, I don't know her well. I know her mother. I work with her mother. What's going on? I just saw that. What's going on? And they knew me well enough to be honest with me. And they talked about how she, on casual, I think it was casual Fridays, she would come in dirty jeans and like a ripped t-shirt, like stained, ripped, nasty. She would sit in the break room during her break with her feet propped up on another chair and she would pop gum. And they they just were having none of it. Now notice none of that has anything to do with her ability to do the job. We never talked about that. But they had a very negative impression of her, wrong or right, about her based on how she showed up for work on casual Fridays. All right, so here's your action step for this one. Consider a wardrobe consultation at a reputable department store, boutique, and this is for men as well. Whether it is like Brooks Brothers or Men's Warehouse, it just depends on what kind of clothes your people wear on a regular basis. Good idea to dress about 10% better than everybody else at your level. Consider the makeup session, ladies. Guys, you may want to consider a skincare session where you could get some skincare tools and resources and products and that kind of thing. Also, everybody, don't forget about things like your nose hair, your ear hair, your fingernails, and unruly eyebrows. That is usually more for the guys. All right, we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna change gears here a little bit. Again, I'm not asking you to be someone that you are not, but rather to be the magnified best version of yourself. It's not a mask, it's not a pretense. It is you, only better. I also want to say that executive presence is a muscle. So the more you use this, the more you adapt these ideas, the easier it will get, the more innate it will become for you. I want to tie all of this into the work that I do with my clients in my 6 month coaching program, the Exclusive Career Accelerator, because it's so relevant. So I want to kind of go over a couple things. The accelerator operates within a framework of the four pillars, each of which are crucial for advancement to the executive ranks. So we certainly cover executive presence and so much more. So we cover visibility and executive brand, which is your strategic narrative, impact and strategic results, which is your business and enterprise acumen, sponsorship and network. So we're covering advocacy and political capital. And then executive skills and mindset, which is your leadership and your resilience. We start with a self assessment that identifies the most important areas that we need to work on together, combined with whatever else you know that you want to bring into the coaching sessions and work on. With each competency, we work on linguistic flips so that as we are working on the competency, we're also working how to speak at an executive level relative to that competency. We cover things like how to make sure you are in the right room to get noticed, how to contribute thought leadership, how to develop your personal brand, how to establish a personal board of directors, and a whole lot more. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in learning about, let's schedule a complimentary consult. I've got the link in the show notes. If you're driving and you don't look at the show notes, just email me. Remember, Lisa, Lesa, at theexclusivecareer.com and put TECA in the subject line. And I'll know that that's what you want to talk about. I'll send you a link to my calendar and we'll get you scheduled and we'll have a 45-minute consult to assess whether that's a good program and a good fit for you. I hope this has been helpful as we talk about developing your executive presence in terms of how you show up, how you present yourself, how you speak, and how you appear, how you look. And I will see you in 2 weeks back on this Bat channel. And then next week, I'll see you back on the exclusive career coach